And again, hello everyone, and welcome to today's event uh, where we want to review the recent CI exams in March. And this event is for level 4. We review both L4M1 and L4M8 in a single event, so that it may save your time and make it kind of like more centralized, more manageable for both students and for me. So today, my main focus is to review the exam in March, and we have two exams, L4M1 and L4M8. For L4M1, obviously we have 4 questions. The first question, as I know, has no scenario. It was about the differences between capital expenditure and operational expenditure. Pretty typical and very normal for question number 1. Question number 2, also no scenario here. It is about analyzing the key stages of the procurement cycle. Because today I want to review both L4M1 and L4M8, therefore I may leave this one until L4M8 because in L4M8, SIP procurement cycle could be a very big topic. And again, this time, question number 1 of L4M8 was also about the key stages of procurement cycle. So for these two exams, we may have very similar area. Let's move on with the third question. It was about conflict of interest and more specifically about how corporate governance may have managed the conflict of interest. Right. So it's kind of like pretty untypical, not very typical, and could be a new question. But normally we can solve this with ease since conflict of interest is a very key matter within procurement, and therefore we need to learn how to manage it. And the final question is about third sector organization, and more specifically about how procurement may assist the achievement of objective for TSO. So as I can recall from relevant principal marker report, where the assessor may see that with the question about third sector organization, students tend to perform weaker because most students are likely to work in private sector and they don't know much about third sector. So for the fourth question here, there are two requirements. First, you need to identify the objectives of third sector organization. And second, you need to write down how procurement with their activities, with the strategies may have assist the achievement of these objectives. Okay, so that was L4M1. And now let's look at the overview of L4M8. With L4M8, we also have 4 questions. First question is about procurement cycle. And here, as I can see, there was a scenario where you need to analyze the key stages of the procurement cycle, the relevant stages that may have that organization to achieve the added value outcome. The second question was about financial analysis and specifically about make comment on the supplier financial performance. Third question, again, about whole life cycle costing and typical elements within such analysis. And the fourth question about ESG, here specifically about the actions to secure suppliers' ESG compliance. All right, so I would like to review all of these questions within today's event, and stay tuned. It could be a pretty long, and if you have specific interest in any exam, then just wait until each question is explained. Second, sometimes my information about these questions could be like I just hear it from some students specifically, and they may not recall correctly about the question. So you have the freedom. You can type down in the chat to correct me what is the main topic of the question, and I may help you to answer that. So during my presentation, feel free to put the information in the chat, and I may help you to address your concern and questions specifically. Now, please, I shall explain each question and guide you how we can maximize our answer and gain the best score in the exam if you see these questions. First, let's look at the question from L4M1. First question is the differences between capital expenditure and operational expenditure. This is a very typical question in L4M1, and you can find more information of how we can approach this question in the not only in the study guide, but also in the sample exam question and answer. In the sample exam question and answer, they have a sample question of capital expenditure and operational expenditure. And when we want to highlight the differences or the similarity between different methods, then we need to have the criteria for the comparison. So for Capex versus Opex comparison, then you can focus on the following criteria. First, the purpose. For capital expenditure, the purpose here is to generate income. It is an investment so that we want to get the return. It is a spend to make the revenue, to spending activity to generate the income, So the purpose of Capex here will be about income generation. And it will have some implication for procurement as well, because we want to make the investment and we want to get the income. So we need to assess its return on investment, and more comprehensively, we want to check for its cash flow, the cash flow that the asset may generate during its lifetime, and so on. Therefore, with the comparison between Capex and Opex, not only you need to highlight the criteria here, not only you need to highlight what are the differences here, but you also need to write down how procurement may approach to these purchases differently, and how we can manage that. And maybe the example from your own work experience. So for the first comparison here, for the first criterion, the Capex is different with the Opex to the Opex by the purpose. Like Capex is for income generation. Therefore, we need to manage the return on investment. We need to assess the return on investment. On the other hand, then with Opex, the purpose here is just about maintaining the normal operation. So not really to generate income, but just have like very normal activity, very normal spend for the organization. Second, we have the differences in financing. For Capex, because it is a very huge investment. So sometimes the organization may need to borrow to fund the activity here, to fund the purchase here. Like they may borrow from the bank to make a purchase of the equipment. And therefore, we also need to assess how well this asset may make a return, and whether the organization has enough financial resources to purchase the assets here. On the other hand, then with Opex, we don't have such we don't need to do such activity. We just need to take the normal budget and to purchase the Opex here. The third difference is about the purchase process. For Capex, of course, they are very big purchase. Therefore, the processes are likely to be complex, and we may approach that in the project management because every Capex purchase could be different. Like we may make the purchase for machinery or warehouse. They are different in nature. So the specification here must have very great details of very huge detail of customization. Therefore, we may need to approach in the project and engage with different stakeholders. Furthermore, as Capex has very high value, so we also need to qualify the supplier differently, and the purchase may be very complex as well. On other hand, with Opex, then the process tend to be simpler, more simple. We only need to engage with very limited range of stakeholders, like with the end user only. And the process here may be very simple, like request for quotation or like under a framework agreement. So we don't need to manage a very huge and complex contract. Next, you can highlight the difference about the complexity, about the need for management by how like cost or net present value. With Opex, we don't have such. We only need to care about the purchase price and other related matter. But with Capex, then the assets may last for a lifetime, may last for a few years. Therefore, we need to focus on different elements of the purchase, different elements of the assets, and whether we can we can generate the positive income for the long run. Next, we can compare regarding the stakeholder. With Capex, then we need to engage with different stakeholders, and we need to customize the specification. It is very difficult to standardize the specification here, as each purchase and each equipment may have different specification, may have different requirements and system integration. So we need to customize. We need to customize the features, technical details for each asset so that it fits our circumstance. For Opex, then the specification could be more simple, and we can standardize that using the some software like e-catalog, and we can just click and buy. Okay, very simple. With Capex, finally, with Capex, the negotiation could be very long because we are negotiating a very important contract. So the negotiation could be long, the contract could be complex, and therefore we need to prepare more rigorously for this kind of purchase. So for the first question, we need to identify different criteria. And then for each criteria, you need to develop your own idea here. You need to explain how Capex is different from Opex in each criteria. And you also need to highlight as procurement, then how we can approach to these characteristics more specifically. And finally, to give the example for this point, or you can apply write the example at the end at the end of your essay and highlight how these features appear in your example and how you can manage the purchase for your company. Okay, so by that approach, I believe that you may have very high score. Okay, if you can write all those points, all those ideas into your answer. Now, let's move on with question number 2 of L4M1. So for this question, as far as I know, it was only about different stages of procurement cycle. As I can recall, it is just about some kind of like you may have the freedom to select the stages within the cycle. So the thing here is that you need to learn the cycle by heart. You need to memorize every stages here. Okay, and you may have the freedom to select a few stages, but you need to distinguish between pre-contract award stages and post-contract award stages. Right. Furthermore, with this kind of question for each stage, you may need to describe the following. First, what is the purpose of that stage? Like for market analysis, then we need to collect the information from market. We need to collect the data, and we need to prepare or identify the way, identify the strategy or plan for purchase, as well as prepare the information before the negotiation. Okay, so that is the purpose. Second, you need to highlight the activity that procurement undertake under each stage. For example, with supplier selection to participate in tender, you need to say that buyer or procurement needs to send the supplier the pre-qualification questionnaire with different criteria, maybe taking from Carter's 10C model. And then after receiving the answer, they need to qualify the supplier for the participation for the contract. If the supplier is shortlisted, then they can receive the tender document. And if they don't qualify, if they are not qualified, we can apply. We must not send any document further. Okay, and we only communicate with the qualified suppliers. Finally, you can highlight the benefits that the stage may bring, like for contract performance and improvement. The benefits here is that the supplier may comply the contract. We can get the added value. We can get the continuous improvement and gain the competitive advantage. Okay, so sometimes the benefits here could be applied quite similar to the purpose of each stage. But if you can, then you need to write about the benefits here. And finally, you can write the example, especially when the question has no scenario. Then you need to write the example of how you apply this stage in your work, in your procurement job. This question will be explained more thoroughly when I mention in L4M8, because in L4M8 it is very big topic, and with L4M1 here, as I know, you have the freedom to select any stage, and as long as you are confident about your choice, then you are free to go. Just write down any stage that you know and explain it thoroughly. In L4M8, for example, they have different approach, like they have a scenario about some company, some organization, and then in the question, they ask you to select like 5 stages that may have the organization here. Now, let's move on with the third question. This question was about how corporate governance may have control conflict of interest. As you can see, there are actually 2 methods here. First, corporate governance, and second, conflict interest. So complete answer should include different areas, different methods. Like first, what is governance and the elements of governance. Second, the definition of conflict interest and its potential consequences on organization and procurement job specifically. And finally, how corporate governance may have control conflict of interest. First, with governance, then it is the structure and how the organization or how the management may direct and control an organization. Okay, and to achieve the objectives of the organization. Governance often contain three major elements. First, the structure for the department and how different department or different functions within the organization interact with each other. They may have some kind of like collaboration. They may have some form of uh, check and control, like we have the audit committee, or we have the compliance. We may have the compliance department. So they tend to check whether other departments comply with the policy and procedure or not. Second element of governance is the policies. Policies are the guidelines for action. They delineate what should be done, what must be done, and what must be avoided. So they set out the standard for actions. What kind of action are acceptable? What kind of action are unacceptable in certain circumstances, in different contexts? And conflict interest could be a part of organization policy, but the policy are toothless unless they are supported by processes and procedures. Processes and procedures are the guidance on how things are done. Like uh, if an employee has conflict of interest, then how she can approach that, how she can report, and how the organization may handle that report. So the conflict interest is one of the policy, one of the ethical policy for the organization, and it needs to be supported by the processes like the report processes, the handling processes, and how how the employee should stand back or disassociate from the situation. And when we move on with the third part of this question here, how corporate governance may control conflict interest, then you can approach in the 4Ds model: disclose, distant, disassociate, and delegate. But the question here is about how governance control conflict of interest. Therefore, you need to be very specific on how we can do that, on how organization may do that. First, they need to deploy the mechanism for disclosure. So when there is an employee, when we have the employee, when we have some purchase or we have some opportunity for employment, then we need to have the database of potential conflict of interest. Every employee and director need to report about their relationship and whether they have any share or holding in any other company that which may become potential employee or may become a potential supplier for the company. So that is first step, disclose. And even when the employee is kind of like facing certain decision, like qualifying supplier for further tender or evaluate the tender, then they realize that the company that they are assessing has some conflict of interest with their own. So they must disclose and report that to their line manager, right? But the organization need to have some mechanism for that. Okay, some guidelines, some policy, some processes for the report, for the management, and to keep the information of and a database of potential conflict of interest. Second, when when the line manager knows that the employee has some form of conflict interest, and we have the actual situation, the employee must distance himself or herself from situation. Like they don't involve, for example, they don't involve anymore in the uh, in that decision anymore, in that process anymore. Okay, that is distant and handle every information to the other employee, to another employee, or to another person. Um, so distant should be connected with delegate, and we also need to have the process for this activity. We need to the employee or the decision maker with conflict interest must distance himself or herself, and then delegate the task to another employee or another person. And they may also disassociate from the situation. Okay, like disassociate from the company, the supplier, or the person that we have the conflict interest with. Okay, and we just walk back and don't involve in the decision anymore. So anyway, to control the conflict interest, we need to have the corporate governance, and the governance here should provide specific guidance on how to handle the conflict interest. Okay, with the 4Ds model, we can specify what can be the specific actions that should be done when we have the actual conflict of interest situation. Now, let's move on with question number 4. Question number 4 is about the third sector organization. So it has a scenario, and because my student could not recall what the scenario is, therefore we need to make some speculation. Third sector organization they are not a single type of organization. Actually, there are some diversity within this sector. Different third sector organization may have different objectives, and here I'm just listing 3 types of third sector organization. First, we have the association, and this is like the membership, a club or like organization for the membership for some for the participants. SIP itself is an association, the association of procurement professional worldwide. Okay, so it is an association, and with association, it means that they need to provide the member service. They need to provide the services to their member. Okay, so that is the role of association. This kind of organization is created because the member see that they need to do something. They need to line up. They need to work with each other. Therefore, they may form an association, and the association in return need to provide the services like improvement, like learning and development, like networking and so on. So that is the role of association. Second, we have the charity. Charity is probably the most common type of third organization. With charity, then they provide the charitable activities, or they provide some activities to support the society, especially the disadvantaged group, like the poor, the homeless, the orphan children, and everyone in needs, like disabled people and so on. Finally, we have the pressure group. A pressure group is created to advocate for some cause, and they may need to promote their cause and encourage the society or the politicians to adopt some changes in the mechanism in the law so that their costs will be certified or will be sold. First of all, we can have the pressure group for climate change. They advocate for the policies to support to support the uh, to support the green energy or something like that. So they tend to be the pressure group, and they collect donation, and then they advocate for their own cost. For different types of third sector, then there are different objectives. So we need to identify the objective first, especially when the question may not mention that. For each type, then we may have different objectives, but generally we can summarize them into these 5 objectives. First, an organization may, the third sector organization may want to raise the awareness of the public about something. Even the charity and the pressure group may aim at this objective. They want to increase the awareness of the public about, for example, the need of the orphan children or the need for actions for climate change or something like that. Second, for the association, they may provide the member services. They provide the services to members. They need to provide some form of like networking opportunity, introduction, or something like that to their member. Third, we may have the charitable activities. This is for the charity. They provide help to society and they want to help as many people as possible. Fourth, the charity and the pressure group may want to attract donation, and donation is their major source of income. Therefore, they want to attract as much as possible, and they may have the disposable revenue for their activity. And finally, they may want to provide social support and demonstrate that they are effective at this. With these objectives, all right, so thank you, Sandra, for the information. I received the message from Sandra. The fourth question was about a scenario about charity organization and how procurement help them save money. So there are some ways that we can do this. So they specify the objective here as save money. Therefore, we need to focus on different activity. Actually, I already prepared for this kind of question, but I think that it is not enough here. It's not enough here. And we need to focus more on saving money. With saving money, then actually we can like focus on different activity. Let's wait. I may have some new slide here. Okay, let me prepare for that. Okay, so the organization here need to save money, and we need to identify what program can do. There are a lot of actions that we can do here, especially if you look at the procurement cycle. Right. Let me. All right. So with very limited time, then this is my suggestion. Because the question is about how procurement may help the organization to save money. So we may focus on procurement action and demonstrate that the third sector organization here must have some efficiency. So we could not like try to drive out the cost by negotiating distributively with the supplier, but we need to approach in a more um, comprehensive way. First, procurement may try to drive down the price by taking the competitive tendering, invite um, as many suppliers as possible, or we can answer using KPI performance specification to identify the alternative and drive down the cost. Or we can consider the make or buy decision, and especially where the third organization may mobilize the volunteer. Therefore, they may ask for donation and demonstrate that the organization here is effective in distributing the donation. The donation here may not be in form of money. They can be in form of other assets, other materials, and they can be in form of labor. The volunteer may join in some activity, like they may have to plant trees in certain area, or they may have to create or make, sorry, construct a building in others. So we can procurement here may also manage the purchase rather cost by calling for donation. But to call for donation, they must prove that their project is effective and create the value for money. Furthermore, for the price here and for the cost here, the third sector organization may focus on the total cost of ownership, and they may focus more on the whole life cost rather than just the purchase price. And the whole life cost here should be capitalized aligned with the objective and with the value of third sector organization. If they are charity that promote for the green energy or for better environment, they should not use the product that create bad impact on the environment. Uh, and procurement may also manage the supplier relationship through different ways, like with integrative negotiation and appeal to supplier that they are doing something good, and everything their effort here will be used for greater good. And they may also try to manage the contract and address the concern of the supplier, and also highlight the appeal and the value of the organization. With us, the organization, they tend to have very limited budget, and therefore, we may not apply use uh, we may not use the budget freely, and we must focus on what the customer organization can do. All right, so I hope this one addressed your concern, and otherwise we can focus on the objectives and the impact on procurement activities. Like if they want to raise awareness, then they need to be ethical. Procurement must be ethical and responsible, purchase the right type product and avoid the bad reputation, avoid the bad environment or something like that. They need to attract donation, so the project must be effective and create some form of value for money. And they also need to create some kind of like demonstrate to the donor that their project and their activities create the real value for money. All right, so by this slide, the revision for, sorry, the review for L4M1 exam ends here. Now, let's turn on L4M8, but before that, allow me to take a break and take a nip cup of water. Okay, so please wait. During the break, I see a few concerns from the participants. First, from Gadget. At the end of this revision, can the question be shared to the participant? Yes, we upload that. We upload the recording to YouTube and share the link to your email. Second, for Sarah Hossain, he has a concern for how to achieve 50 to 60 band in L4M1. Okay, so I know that this is very typical and essential concern for any student in L4M1 and L4M8. But I think that most students are just overly focused on the length of the answer. So the problem is not about the length, but it is about how you can construct your answer. With an essay, with 45 minutes for a question, you can write pretty much if you have the focus, if you concentrate on that. From my own experience, within that time frame, I can write like 600 to 700 words. And I'm not a native speaker. Okay, so you can write even more than me if you have better vocabulary. But the thing is, you need to know what to write. You can write, if you capitalize, it's not really about the, not only about the knowledge, but also about your writing skill. When you try to write something, it is capitalize about communication. And with communication, you need to know what you are about to communicate. You need to communicate about the question and about the things that you learn from study guide, right? So for every slide here, I often suggest you the structure, like for each stage of program cycle. Let's talk about the purpose. Let's talk about the activity. Let's talk about the benefits. For the third sector organization, let's talk about the objective here of third sector. What is third sector? What are the objectives of third sector? And what can be potential actions for procurement? And then if you feel that you still have time and the things or your writing could be expanded, then you can link to scenario, or you can link to your, you can write down your example. And if you are a better writer, a very quick typer, then you can expand like for each idea here, you can expand like why procurement need to do this and how they can contribute to overall performance, how they can contribute to how they can help the organization to save the cost, save the money. Okay, and so on. So the more question. Okay, so with a question in L4M1 or L4M8, then you need to pose yourself smaller question. Like with the conflict interest, you can ask yourself about what is corporate governance, what are elements of corporate governance, what is conflict interest, what are different ways to manage conflict interest, what are the consequences of conflict interest, and so on. So the more questions you can break down, then the longer you can write. I can even imagine that if you know this method, then you never run out of idea to write. It is not about memorizing the It is not about memorizing the knowledge from the book, but more about your writing skill. So as long as you can recall some key points from study guide in relevant matters, like about the procurement cycle, about the Capex and Opex, then you can expand that, then your answer will be highly appreciated. Now, another question from Sandra. Explain the common word as well. All right, so with the common word, I don't think that we need to remember every common word. Let's just categorize them. Normally with level 4, there are only two groups of common word. The short answer common word like outline or list. You can or define as well. Right? So we have outline, list, and define. Those three common words. With those three common words, you only need to provide short answer and maybe in the form of bullet points. And there are long answer command words like analyze, explain, describe. Right, so normally we see those three command words: analyze, explain, and describe. With explain, describe, then we tend to write down the objective as possible. Like they are only about the knowledge, only about the theory that we know from study guide. But with analyze, then you also need to include your own opinion, like advantages and disadvantages of certain things. Therefore, you actually don't need to learn or know or learn by heart the definition and how each common word is interpreted. You actually just need to categorize them and understand the requirement there. Okay, so we only have short answer and long answer. Not really many common words to talk about. All right, now after the break, I would like to continue with L4M8 exam review. With L4M8, the questions tend to be quite predictable. The first question is about procurement cycle, and from 2025 onward, from 2024 onward. Then question number 1 of L4M8 is always about procurement cycle. They may have scenario or they may not have scenario, but anyway, then first question is always procurement cycle. We already have 5 exam series so far, and every one of them, every question number 1 of L4M8 is about procurement cycle. So the first thing you need to prepare before the exam is to learn by heart this whole cycle, every stages. All right, so my advice here is the same to L4M1. You need to highlight the purpose, you need to highlight the activities of procurement, and you need to highlight the benefits. And with L4M8 here, as I can recall, it has a scenario where the where students are expected to apply different stages for the scenario and have that analysis to improve. So you have the freedom to choose any stage here as long as they are relevant to us to the scenario. The organization may have problems in overspending. They may have problem in low quality. They may have the problem with negotiation or with the supply selection, etc. So you may select the relevant stage for the organization. For example, if they have the problem with the price, with the overspending, then we can focus on defining needs. The organization may try to switch to another specification. They may focus on tendering process, like develop the document detailed specification or bid and tender evaluation. If if the organization has some problem with the quality, Then, of course, they may focus on, again, specification. Furthermore, they can focus on they can focus on bid and tender evaluation, where they can select different criteria. If the organization in scenario has a problem with underperforming supplier, then we can focus on stage number 11, contract performance and procurement, etc. So as long as you can describe the stage as I suggest here, I believe that your answer will be rewarded with very high score. All right, so this is some example of how I develop the details for each state, state number 7, 8, 9, and 11. Okay, so for state number 7, it is about sending the ITT and other documents to the supplier. So the purpose here is to inform them about the opportunity and ensure the fairness. And the action here is very simple: send the same set of documents at the same time and ensure that every supplier has the sufficient time period for submitting the answer, submitting the bid or tender. With stage number 8, it is about bid and tender evaluation. The purpose here is to find out which offer, which bid or tender offers the best value for money. So here we need to do something like first open the bid and tender after the deadline, ensure that no confidential information is leaked to a third party, and assess the tender based on the set out criteria in the tender documents and with a team. With stage number 9, it's about warehouse logistics and receipt. So the purpose here is to get the supplier ready for the contract. Sorry, step number 9 is a contract award and contract implementation. So the purpose here is to get the supplier ready for the contract and negotiate with them, maybe drive further value through negotiation or post-tender e-auction. With this stage, we need to notify the winner from the stage number 8, the winner of the tendering process, and then invite them into negotiation. If the negotiation fails, then we can switch to the runner-up and other supplier. And until we can find out the supplier, we can conclude and sign a contract with them and notify other supplier. With contract implementation, you also need to prepare for the transition from one supplier to another. So we need to collect the data and prepare and submit the document, send the document to the supplier about the contract and how and what they need to do next. For stage number 11, it is about contract management and continuous improvement. So the purpose here is to ensure that the contract is duly performed and we get the best value for money from contract management. With stage number 11, the action may include using different KPIs, SLA, periodic review, continuous improvement, and ensure that the contract is performed. If there is any if there is any underperformance, we need to address that as soon as possible and apply some contract remedy. But we need to do that in a mindset for growth and continuous improvement. Encourage the supplier to innovate and improve, not just to punish their effort. So we need to approach with supplier in a way that more collaborative and deliver better value for money. All right, so this is just some overview of the a few stages within the cycle. And in the exam, you may select other stages other than me, and you can develop that into further details. Remember that this question is very basic and it is a must for anyone who is about to sit L4M8. So study this, learn by heart the whole cycle, and prepare for my exam. The second question of L4M8 was about financial ratios. So for this question, as I can recall, there's no requirement for you to calculate the financial ratios, but you need to compare between different suppliers. Have like 3 or 5. I cannot have the detailed information here. About 3 or 5 suppliers, and we have a table of their financial ratios, like current ratio, quick ratio, gearing, and different profitability ratios like net profit margin. So to understand and to solve this question, actually the requirement is to comment on their performance and how procurement may and what kind of supplier will be recommended for the contract. So we need to look at each supplier differently and understand their number here. But before that, you need to know the formula to calculate different ratio here. With the question about financial ratio, you need to establish first, understand for each ratio there will be a suitable threshold. It could depend on the ratio itself, and in other case, it could depend on the industry. So, for example, for current ratio, we take the current assets divided by current liability. So we tend to prefer any supplier with current ratio greater than 1. Okay, so they have more assets than liability. Similarly, with quick ratio, we also prefer some supplier that has quick ratio greater than 1. But sometimes the supplier may have very substantial inventory. Although inventory is risky, but it is acceptable that sometimes they have a little bit of inventory. So therefore, quick ratio here could be like 0.8 or 0.9 or 1 or little more than 1. It shows that they have the inventory. They still have the inventory and they can meet the demand of the customer when it is required. But the inventory is not too much and creates some problem in the long run. Third, we have gearing. In the study guide, they have the standard formula for gearing as total debt divided by total equity. So the gearing here, the gearing ratio here should be smaller than 100%. This formula is often calculated in percentage, so it should be smaller than 100%. And if this one goes beyond 100, then it could be a sign of problems because the supplier has more debt than equity. It means that in the long run, they may not pay off their debt immediately, and they are over leveraged, and they may risk insolvency in the long run. For profit margin, especially they may give you some data on the net profit margin. So the net profit margin is equal to the ratio between the net income and revenue or sale. Normally, for different industries, they may have different benchmark for profit margin, but preferably for most industry, the profit margin, net profit margin range from 5 to 10%, or a little bit more than 10, like 12 or 15%. So if you look at the number from supplier, we tend to prefer the supplier that has positive net profit margin. But it is not necessarily that negative profit margin is bad, because sometimes they are just spending on the investment, or they are just a new business, and therefore they need to make a lot of investment and increase their increase their expenses, but they are trying to grow and catch up with the market. Therefore, they may have some negative net profit margin for a period, but in the long run, they may have the potential for growth as long as they may demonstrate the growth further on. So with the question on the comment here, we need to find a pseudo threshold apply around 1 for current ratio, around 0.8, and 1 for quick ratio, less than 100% for gearing, and from 5 to 15% for from 5 to 50% for net profit margin. Second, we can compare between different suppliers. Apply which supplier may have low or high ratios, and then we can comment on their potential on the potential impact of the ratio. For higher current ratio, it means that the organization has sufficient current assets and sufficient working capital, so that they can take on more projects, and the buyer may rely on the supplier for the short-term project. For healthy gearing, it means that this company has the gearing and debt under managed. Therefore, we can believe, we can trust in their longevity, in their sustainability, financial sustainability. For a positive net profit margin, it means that they have the economic viability and they may not go bankrupt in foreseeable time. With other suppliers which have poorer ratio, we have worse ratios, then we may make comment on their viability or about their sustainability. But if the question provide more information, like about the factor, about the industry, you can make the comment by taking the reference to the external factors. You can make comments on external factors, like about industry, about the market. Sometimes they may have negative, like profit margin, because the market is down due to, for example, the pandemic, or recently we have the tariff. So we can consider all that factors and understand the position of that business. For question number 2, like this, it is the best that you can practice with calculation of ratio. There are a lot of financial ratio. There are a lot of financial statements that you can find online. You can practice with those statements and make comment on those companies. The third question, also very predictable, about the whole life cycle costing, about different elements within whole life cycle cost. So for this kind of question, you need to focus on a few elements, and especially the elements that are highlighted in the scenario. Normally, I often divide the whole life cycle costing into 5 areas, or into 5 major elements, like the total cost of acquisition, including some costs like research, sourcing, ordering, the purchase price, cost for insurance, delivery, and installation. For second, we have the operation, we have the consumables for the assets, and the wages for the operators. Third, we have the maintenance. We can spend the maintenance for the spare parts, MRO, the cost for the employee servicing the assets, and so on. And also with maintenance, don't forget to include the downtime cost, the cost that when the asset is out of order, or when the asset is under maintenance, then we may have some idleness in the production, or idleness in operation. So they create some form of downtime. At the end of life, we consider about the commissioning, disposal, or potential revenue from resale assets. And we may consider about financing throughout the life, like the fees for finance from the assets or the interest for the asset. So with whole life cycle costing, with this question, you only need to describe a few elements that come relevant to the asset. Like they may focus on some machinery, or they may focus on the warehouse or some vehicle. For each type of assets, we need to highlight some your choice. Uh, you may pick your own elements here. For example, for a vehicle, then we also have the cost of acquisition like purchase or insurance, but we don't have the cost of installation. Just need to purchase. We and purchase insurance for the asset like that. For a vehicle, also we need to pay for the consumable like the fuel for that vehicle, and the wages for the operator like the drivers. Okay, it also needs to be maintained, and it may gain some resale price. Okay, so we don't need to capitalize this decommission or disposal, but we can resell, or we can decommission the assets and send it to the junkyard. Okay, so this is about the question on whole life cycle costing. I believe that students tend to perform pretty well on this question, so I don't need to go much into details, and I need to spend more time on final question about how to improve suppliers' ESG compliance. So with ESG, as you know, it is the abbreviation for environment, social, and governance. It means that the supplier needs to focus on different matters other than just the economic return or economic profit. With ESG, we may have different matters, like with the governance, we have the corruption, bribery, human rights, modern slavery, and also conflict interest as well. With social, we have some problems like the development of local economy, local businesses, the participation from the disadvantaged group. And with environment, we have the emission, we have the waste, we have energy consumption, and so on. So for these ESG criteria, then we need to ensure that the software conform to our standard. First, they need to be aware of our standard. Therefore, you may need to include the ESG standard in the contract or within the code of conduct. Right. So my first solution here is to include a code of conduct for the software, and it should be made a part of the contract. They must be aware what they need to do, especially the objective of ESG. Second, we can conduct regular audit and assessment based on the code conduct. Anyway, then the software must agree to the standard before we do the audit. The audit here must be done by an independent party to ensure the objectivity and check that whether software is compliant to different ESG criteria. Third, for more comprehensive report, we can include the ESG balance scorecard. For scorecard, we can focus on the four perspectives, like their operations, their environment performance, social performance, governance performance, and so on. So we can summarize the performance here into a scorecard and make it like some form of make it like a part of supplier assessment. And if they have weaker performance, then we need to have the some address, have like review meeting and address that. If they don't improve, then the buyer may terminate the contract in the next meeting or with an announcement. But we also need to improve the supplier by collaborative way, like provide them with the necessary training and capacity. They need to know what they need to do and how to do that. So we may provide them with the training. We need to raise their awareness about ESG or offer the collaborative partnership if they prove that they are effective and they are compliant to ESG standards. And of course, in the contract, we need to introduce the incentive and disincentive of supplier. If they comply to the ESG standard, we may pay them a bonus, or we may extend the contract without tendering the contract again. And if they don't perform well, we can terminate the contract and find another supplier or introduce some form of service credit or penalty and corrective action plan if they fail to commit to any ESG standard. Okay, so it needs to be comprehensive. First, we need to make them aware about ESG and our standard by code conduct. Then we can include the KPI SOA under the form of ESG balance scorecard. And then we may provide them with the training. In the contract, we may provide them with the incentive and disincentive. And we may do the regular audit to ensure that they always comply to our standard. The audit here must be done must be done in a form of like regular and also certain audit to ensure that they always comply with our standard. All right, so this is the end of today's revision, today's review. If you feel that our event is very helpful, please contact us on WhatsApp or keep up to date with our events. We often organize them during the weekend on Saturday, and next week we plan to prepare for the event for review level 5 CI exam. So just keep up to date to our event, and if you have any further concern, please contact us on WhatsApp or email. We are happy to have you and every other SIP student. Thank you very much for your participation today. And I hope that my event, my presentation, provide you with very helpful information. I hope that to see you again in other events. Thank you and goodbye.